I recently remarried Ted, who is younger than me, and we set up a new home together. I was looking forward to the start of our enjoyable life, just the two of us. That's when it happened. My eldest son and his wife are moving in with us. I couldn't believe my ears. He meant to let his son from his previous marriage, Greg, and Greg's wife, Angela, live in the house I had bought. It's great to have more family, isn't it? I felt indignation at Angela's presumptuous words. And then, on the day they were moving in, I received a call from an angry Angela. "Oh, you found out already?" I smiled like a witch. In fact, I never intended to live with them from the start. My name is Mandy Baker, and I'm 51 years old. 2 years ago, I met Ted, who is 8 years younger than me. And we got married quickly after about 6 months of dating. Getting married to a younger man after turning 50 might have drawn various criticisms from society in the past, but there was a reason for it. That's because my first marriage was arranged. The family of my ex-husband was wealthy, and he, born and raised in a well-off family, was modest in appearance but a gentle and kind person. "I'll work outside from now on, so you should take it easy at home." True to his words, I quit my job and became a full-time housewife. A year into the marriage, I was fortunate to have our daughter Katie before I started to feel bored. And I found myself in a relatively happy family life. However, that life did not last long. 8 years into the marriage, my ex-husband died in a traffic accident. The shock of suddenly losing my partner and the anxiety of having to raise Katie alone turned my life dark in an instant. Fortunately, or unfortunately, my ex-husband left us with an inheritance, so we did not struggle financially. Katie was a kind and steady child who cared for me, making child-rearing not so difficult. Despite the sudden misfortune, looking back now, my daughter has grown up safely. And I consider my life to have been blessed. Still, there were times when I pondered the possibilities of a different life. If I had refused the arranged marriage back then, would my life have been completely different? But it was pointless to think about such things now. I had to move forward decisively. After my ex-husband passed away, I started working from home as a writer for cooking magazines. Thanks to my former boss from the publishing company where I used to work. Working from home was hassle-free, but it also meant fewer opportunities to meet new people. That's how I settled into a monotonous life of parenting and work. Even after Katie became independent and left home, my life remained the same. I woke up at a fixed time every day, worked, occasionally attended meetings, ate the food I cooked myself, worked some more, and then went to sleep. During these repetitive days, I met Ted, a freelance photographer, through an editor of a magazine. In his 40s, he was younger than me, stylish, and a wonderful man. Both of us had been married before. I had a 28-year-old daughter. And he had an adult son who was about to get married. Since it's our second life, let's enjoy it to the fullest. Encouraged by Ted's words, I decided to get married without overthinking it. He was completely different from my ex-husband, and his lightheartedness felt refreshing. Ted was initially very positive. And he knew a lot about fashionable places and lively spots I didn't know about. Absorbing new things from him made me feel as if I could turn back time, wanting to do something for him in return. I invited him to my home and cooked him my specialty dishes. I don't know if it suits your taste, but I love cooking. It's really delicious. If I'm going to get married, I want it to be to a woman who's good at cooking. Being complimented on my cooking made me truly happy. For you, Ted, I'd make something delicious every day. Really? Then I'll ask for it every day. And so, with Ted coming to my house, our married life began. However, as we started living together as a couple, I began to notice some concerns. Of course. I was prepared for some discomfort since we were two people living together for the first time, but you haven't talked much about work lately. Is there something worrying you? I tried to subtly inquire about his work situation. Lying on the sofa, Ted answered. Actually, I'm currently on a break from work. There are various circumstances. But I'm getting money from my parents for living expenses, so you don't have to worry. It seemed Ted was nearly unemployed. However, since we were not in a relationship where we planned to have and raise children together, I decided not to pursue his private matters any further. I wanted our second life to be free from domestic burdens, living happily in a romantic relationship. Several months passed since Ted and I started living together. Suddenly, he expressed a desire to move. My current apartment is located in the suburbs, over an hour away from the city center by train. I moved here seeking a better environment for raising Katie after losing my ex-husband, and had lived here ever since. Compared to the city, the area has better security, is blessed with nature, and provides a comfortable living environment for everyone from children to the elderly. I liked it here, but if we live in a place with so many old people, you'll turn into an old lady soon, he said, laughing. His words stuck in my heart. But I thought acknowledging anger would mean admitting I was an old lady. So I asked him with a smile. So, where would you like to live, Ted? Somewhere within 10 minutes of New York City would be nice. But wouldn't that be a bit too noisy? It's fine. They say you can get used to anywhere you live. The most important thing about a place is its convenience. Although I felt a slight discomfort with his demand for convenience despite not working, I also thought that maybe this town wasn't the right fit for Ted's vibe. Living in a place he liked might also encourage him to be more positive about work. Besides, Ted had lost the fashionable atmosphere he had when we met. Thinking of him, I decided to listen to Ted's wishes. From that day, I started looking for a house for us to live in together. However, using the inheritance passed down from my ex-husband. For my new husband made me feel guilty. After much deliberation, I called Katie to consult. As I mentioned before, she is already independent and currently working abroad. Katie, who was a protectable girl when her father died, has grown into a woman who handles her work efficiently. I braced for a negative response when I consulted her, but her answer was indifferent. The inheritance from Dad is yours, Mom. I've already left home, so there's no need for you to worry about me. I was pleased to see her grow into an independent woman, yet it also felt somewhat formal. It was the same when I got remarried. She just said, "Congratulations," without inquiring further about my partner. However, if I should be happy about her becoming independent, then so be it. Perhaps when I first consult my distant daughter about my life, it shows that I haven't fully let go as a parent. I understand, Katie. I'll live my life for myself. I made a clear statement. Just don't have any regrets, Mom. With those words, Katie ended the call. Not having regrets. That phrase felt like a fishbone stuck in my heart. Following that, Ted and I continued to visit various properties. Watching him happily inspect each one, I found myself feeling happy too. However, the newly built single-family homes with gardens in the area Ted desired were too expensive for us to afford. In the end, I had to ask Ted to compromise. And we were introduced to a reasonably nice second-hand property by an acquaintance. It takes 20 minutes from New York City. Well, it's better than the previous town that felt like a nursing home, so this is fine. There was a bite in Ted's words. Until now, I had laughed it off as him being harmless, but lately, it's been nagging at me. Perhaps my romantic feelings for him have faded. The thought suddenly filled me with anxiety. Ted, do you love me? It was a childish question to ask. I knew it wasn't something a woman over 50 should be saying. But the fear of losing the happiness right in front of me made me say it out loud. Hearing my anxious words, Ted suddenly looked at me kindly. "What are you talking about? I married you because I love you. And Mandy, you're the best partner I've ever had." Whether it was a lie or truth, those words gave me a sense of security again. Since I've decided to live with Ted, I must trust him more than anyone. And so, we set up a new home closer to the city center. Once we started living there, life in a single-family home wasn't so bad. I could grow some vegetables in the garden, and making a flower bed brightened up the whole house. If it's just the silly life of the two of us, I didn't care where we lived. That's what I thought, right before Ted dropped a bombshell. Living close to the city center is convenient, right? But don't you think a single-family home is too big for just the two of us? I asked back, "What do you mean? Living in a big house with just the two of us would get depressing, don't you think?" "But Ted, you were the one who wanted a detached house, weren't you?" "Yeah. So I thought, why not live with everyone?" "That's why, in 3 weeks." Ted paused before continuing. "My eldest son and his wife are moving in." He said it with an innocent laugh. "You mean Greg and his wife?" Ted had a son named Greg from his previous marriage. After the divorce, Greg was raised by his ex-wife back in her hometown. I heard he had recently gotten married to a woman named Angela. They want to live in New York. Seems like young folks from the countryside are drawn to the city. I haven't done much fatherly stuff, so I at least want to fulfill Greg's wish. Hearing Ted talk so lightly, I felt a surge of distrust. Could it be that marrying me and buying a house was his goal all along? If he never loved me and was only after my assets, would I become unnecessary now that we've bought the house? The thought brought an unprecedented sense of urgency. There were times when he wouldn't come home for days without contacting me. And often, my messages would be read but ignored. I had suspected there might be another woman. But since he always came back home, I told myself he had his own social life. However, I couldn't just stay silent this time. "What are you talking about, Ted? It's out of the question. This house was bought for us two to live in." When I retorted angrily, he responded with a smirk. "Why are you so mad? I'm not saying let's live with strangers. I just want to live with my son. If you love me, you'll come to love Greg too. I don't know them at all, and I've never even met them. Then you can get to know them. Everyone is a stranger at first. Plus, Angela, Greg's wife, is a good girl. Think of her as your daughter. Mandy, you were lonely all this time after being abandoned by your daughter, right?" My anger reached its peak. What infuriates me the most is that Ted thinks I'm a lonely woman. Abandoned? Katie became independent and left the nest. I'm not lonely at all, in fact, I was happy about it. Don't pretend to understand my feelings. Even when I yelled in earnest, Ted looked unfazed. He must be accustomed to confrontations. "But you were lonely, right? After losing your previous husband and living apart from your daughter? It's better to admit you felt lonely. Besides, a home is better filled with a bustling family." Ted's words left me speechless, smiling all the while. Perhaps there was a feeling of loneliness. After losing my previous husband and raising Katie alone, I felt like the focus of my life had blurred. Maybe that's why I thought of changing my life with a love that would refocus it. After mulling it over for a while, I said, "I understand what you're saying. But, I'd like to get along with Greg and his wife before we start living together. Could you give me their contact information?" Then Ted, looking pleased, made a call. "Hello, Angela? Mandy said it's okay. Also, she wants to get along with everyone before we start living together." Ted called Angela first, not Greg. Probably because Angela, being the daughter-in-law, might have more influence. As my earlier passion subsided, replaced by calm, an entirely opposite scenario started unfolding in my mind. I wanted to close the gap as much as possible before the two moved in. The greater the shock I could deliver to them, the better. Now, I was determined to make them regret taking a single woman like me lightly. From that day, I interacted with Angela almost daily through messages. It seemed she was very keen on living in New York. Pretending to be kind. I took photos of fashionable stores and places young people might like in the city, sending them to her almost daily. Each time, Angela, oblivious to my true feelings, responded happily. Amazing. I've always wanted to go to that shop. Then when you come to New York, I'll take you to lots of places. I didn't go out much with my daughter, Katie. So, is it okay if I think of you as my own daughter? Of course. Forget about your daughter who went far away and think of me as your daughter. I couldn't help but feel disingenuous at her words. Having a bigger family must be happiness, right? Angela, misunderstanding that she was favored. Probably just innocent, without a hint of malice. Just a child, voicing her wishes without really understanding the world. Thinking this way, any brewing resentment seemed to dissipate. Or perhaps, considering my own desires to live for love, I wasn't much different. Yes, that's right. Oh, I'll prepare a whole set of household goods for you. Since you'll be living in a new place, everything should be new. Angela responded with joy, "Thank you, Mother." If it were Katie, she wouldn't have been so easily pleased by offers to buy anything. She had always been considerate of me, a single mother. Having lost her father in elementary school, Katie must have felt loneliness more than anyone. Yet, she never once said, "I'm lonely." When asked what she wanted for her birthday, she'd only say, "I just want to eat your cooking," leaving me clueless about what she truly desired. I never really gave her a present. Katie was a child who always put others first, had many friends. But I wish she had been a bit more dependent on me, her mother. She always seemed so grown up. Angela was the complete opposite. Probably pampered by her parents, and likely by Greg and Ted as well. That's why she could think of moving into someone else's home so abruptly. Reflecting on it, it was the same when Ted arrived. He just showed up at my apartment and made himself at home as if it were natural. Back then, I was completely in love with Ted, so much so that his presence alone made me happy. However, that now feels like a distant past. Today, the numerous photos handed to me by the detective agency shattered my heart completely. As I had suspected, Ted had been unfaithful multiple times after our marriage. Moving from mere suspicion to undeniable fact made the revelation all the more devastating. In front of the detective, I couldn't help but cry. I thought I wouldn't be upset over something like infidelity anymore. But contrary to my will, tears flowed endlessly. Ted, like a stray cat that gets fed in various places, had been unfaithful with multiple partners. I wanted to tear up the photos of him with other women immediately, but they are crucial evidence. And the situation, which I had naively let slide until now, is something I need to confront head-on. Unaware of my turmoil, Ted spent the day lazing around and watching TV. Compared to the US, there's a lot of conflict in other countries. Everyone should just live in harmony and help each other out. You think so too, right, Mandy? He spoke to me while I was busily cleaning beside him. A little while ago, I might have found such behavior endearing, but now it just made me resentful. However, I maintained my composure and responded. Yes, you're right. If everyone helped each other out, there might be no more conflicts in this world. Exactly. No one wants to fight. Just enjoying life day by day is enough. Ted, yawning, said, while he made a good point about the undesirability of conflict. I wondered if he ever learned the importance of sincerity in considering others' feelings. I remembered the sincerity of my ex-husband. He didn't have Ted's charm, but he was very honest with me. Not just with me, but it seemed like he was that way in all aspects of his life. He wasn't particularly popular, but he always had a consistent smile and hardly any emotional ups and downs. Perhaps that's why he passed away so early. It's often said that the good die young. And people like Ted and me, who are still maturing, end up living on. Hey, Ted. I want to do a big cleanup before Greg and Angela arrive. Could you leave the house for a while? Actually, why don't you go on a trip with them? Then come back on the moving day. I'll make sure the house is perfect for welcoming you all. I placed an envelope with money in front of Ted. He slowly picked it up and looked inside. You said you couldn't do much as a father, right? Why not take them on a trip? Ted looked up at me with a happy smile. That's a good idea, Mandy. I think they'll be happy about it. Watching his back as he prepared to leave, I whispered to myself. Goodbye, Ted. As I watched his figure diminish in the distance, I muttered those words. And then, the day Greg and Angela were supposed to move in arrived. However, I wasn't waiting to welcome them. I left the house early in the morning. I was heading to the airport. Katie had finished her work abroad and was returning home today. Her return was unexpected, but honestly, I felt relieved. After everything that had happened, my heart was unsettled. But I knew I could return to my true self with Katie around. Ignoring the messages popping up on my phone, I continued to the airport. Looking forward to seeing my daughter after a long time. Ignoring the continuous messages, my phone finally rang. I was in the airport lobby when I decided to answer it. It was Angela. Hey. Where are you, old lady? So, in their eyes, I was not a mother-in-law, but old lady. They never thought of me as family. All our conversations had been a sham. With that realization, I felt no guilt. I felt a surge of strength in my temples. The key doesn't work, and there's a "for sale" sign on the door. Don't tell me you've been lying to us. Angela shouted this out. The call seemed to be on speaker, as I could hear the surrounding voices too. It's no use. We can't get in anywhere. I could visualize Ted panicking because the key he had didn't work, but I felt no sympathy. Taking advantage of no one seeing my face, I forced the corners of my mouth up into a smile. It must have been a displeasing smile, like that of a wicked witch. Oh, you found out already? I said this mockingly, with a tone full of spite. Hoping my feelings would come across even over the phone. What do you mean by this? Angela angrily responded. You should be able to figure it out. You and I are strangers. Why did you think you could live in a house I bought? You're so naive. Then Ted interjected, Let me talk, Angela. You're on speaker, just talk from there. I can hear everything clearly. All of your panicked voices, everything. Half of what I was doing felt like acting. But the other half was very real, and to them, it must have seemed like madness. Mandy. What's all this about? Our house is being sold. As the sign says. And it's not our house, it's my house. I sent your belongings back to your parents' house. They should have arrived by now, along with photos proving your infidelity. Oh, and I enclosed the divorce papers, so make sure to file them. Sending photos of his infidelity to his parents was a low move, yet Ted surprisingly didn't get angry. Mandy, are you leaving me? His unexpectedly vulnerable response took me aback. I had prepared retorts in case he got angry. Trying to elicit sympathy like that, he really is a hopeless man. Crying won't help. If anyone should be crying, it's me. I snapped back sharply. Dad, are you okay? Greg seemed to be worried about his father but had nothing to say against me. Don't cry, Dad. Hang in there. Greg was constantly worried about his father. Perhaps he's too soft, just like Ted, which is why he ended up with someone as brazen as Angela. In contrast to their useless lamenting, Angela came out strong. You think you can get away with this, old lady? You said you'd prepare the household goods, so we got rid of most of our stuff. This isn't what we agreed on. What are you going to do about it? I never told you to throw anything away. That was your doing. And let's be honest, none of us considered each other family, right? Without any trust from the start, there were no promises to break. I let out all the lines I had prepared in my head. You pretended to be nice, but you're awful. The worst. That's rich coming from you, Angela. Anyway, I just sold the house I bought. I'm divorcing Ted, and we have nothing to do with each other anymore. It's your fault for believing in him. Then Angela directed her anger towards Greg. I can't do this anymore. Greg, we're getting a divorce. I married you because you said we could live in a single-family house in New York. Angela screamed in a frenzy, but Greg could only apologize. I'm sorry. I couldn't help but criticize Greg's complete lack of resolve. Greg, I know it's strange for an outsider like me to say this, but you should carefully choose who you marry. Especially, you shouldn't judge someone based on their appearance. Regret always comes too late. Then Ted chimed in. Mandy, I can't stand being left by you. My parents have cut me off. Without a home, what am I supposed to do starting tomorrow? Please, come back. I was utterly dumbfounded by his words. Ted, at 40, still relying on his parents' allowances as if it were the most natural thing. And what's more terrifying is that I had allowed such behavior. They say love is blind, but waking from that love feels like hell. Despite Katie's advice to have no regrets, I felt an overwhelming sense of remorse. Sorry, but Katie is returning from abroad today. She's planning to work in the US from now on. So, I've decided to live with her. I'm not lonely anymore, and besides, you have plenty of other places to go, don't you? But in reality, I knew he had nowhere to go. I had confronted his affairs, showing the other women photos of his cheating. Not a single one wanted to continue seeing Ted after being confronted with photographic evidence from his legal wife. It means his presence was even lighter than that of a stray cat. I have nowhere to go. For some reason, no one is answering my calls. Then you should go to your parents' house. After all, I sent your belongings there. Just make sure to file the divorce papers quickly. If you have any objections, I'm ready to face them. I'm not afraid of taking this to court. I felt a blur in my vision, as if the focus of a camera lens was being lost. And the scene before me became indistinct. Before everything faded away, I said, well, goodbye, and hung up the phone. Looking at the dimly lit screen of my cell phone, I noticed the glistening tears for the first time. I headed to the restroom to carefully wipe them away. However, upon reuniting with Katie, she immediately noticed something was amiss. She's always been sensitive to people's moods. Mom, did something happen? To Katie, who asked with concern, I responded as calmly as I could muster. I haven't told you yet, but I'm planning to get a divorce. So, let's live together. Just the two of us, in a detached house with a garden in the city. Katie's expression clouded over, making me fear she would refuse. She's independent, and it wouldn't be strange if she preferred living alone. My presence could be a burden to her burgeoning independence. But then, Katie surprised me with her words. Actually, there's something I haven't told you. I've been scared to say it, but here goes. I'm pregnant. She had been in a relationship with a foreign man for a year, considering marriage. But when she became pregnant, he broke up with her unilaterally. Shocked, Katie considered termination. But ultimately couldn't bear the thought of ending an innocent life. She decided to quit her job and return to the US. I was speechless, unable to believe Katie had been through so much. I saw a faint shimmer in her determined eyes and hugged her. I'm so happy to hear I'll have a grandchild. I'm sure he's smiling down on us from heaven. Let's take care of this together. Katie burst into tears, the first time I've seen her cry. Holding her tightly, I felt an overwhelming need to protect her. There's nothing to be afraid of. We'll get through this together. I returned home from the airport, tenderly caring for her as she was heavy with child. As we returned home from the airport, of course, there was nobody there. This house was now just for Katie and me. Mom, there's a for sale sign on this house. I returned her worried look with a smile and swiftly tore off the for sale sign. It's all a bluff. From today, this is our home, just for us as mother and daughter. I've replaced everything with new things for your return. I've also cooked a lot, especially for today. As a pregnant woman, you need to eat well. Katie stepped into the house, relieved. I followed her, carrying her carry-on case. Welcome back, Katie. I'm back, Mom. We exchanged smiles. And welcome, baby. Saying this, I gently touched Katie's belly, which had not yet begun to show much. Though not visible to the eye, I could feel the new life's heartbeat under my hand. A few days later, my divorce from Ted was finalized. Abandoned by his parents and everyone else, he tried to contact me a few times. But I ignored all his attempts. He should be grateful that I didn't demand compensation. Then, I heard news that Ted had been arrested for breaking into his first wife's home. And stealing money, among other things. It seemed this wasn't his first offense. Rumors had circulated about mysterious thefts at the magazine company he once worked for, leading to his ostracization from the industry. This likely contributed to his inability to find work. I thought he was harmlessly irresponsible, but he had actually been engaging in criminal activities. Continuing a relationship with him could have been dangerous. Greg and Angela were also being questioned for their involvement in Ted's crimes. Apparently, Angela had a long-standing feud with her mother-in-law, while Ted was considered the mastermind behind the incident. I couldn't help but suspect Angela might have been pulling the strings behind the scenes. Regardless, I hope they confess and atone for their actions soon. Katie's belly grew rapidly. Even though I had experienced childbirth myself, watching it from the side overwhelmed me with its mystique. Just imagining the growing child inside brought me immense joy. Moreover, a wonderful opportunity came my way, an offer to publish a book. A collection of my articles and recipes was requested by numerous readers. Naturally, as a humble writer, publishing a book was beyond my dreams. So I immediately accepted the offer. And so, I became a grandmother. The home that welcomed Katie and her newborn was filled with the signs of spring. With flowers I planted during the winter blooming wildly. Seeds I had sown in the garden were sprouting, promising growth. Supporting Katie as a single mother, I imagined a second life that promised to be joyful. In my heart, a beautiful spring sky stretched wide and clear.